At my pregnant SIL, ignored my son's severe allergy, and brought peanut. I am Lucia, 32 years old, a single mom to my precious 7-year-old son Lucas. His severe peanut allergy rules our lives, every meal a careful dance with danger. My former in-laws never understood, especially my pregnant sister-in-law Jessica, who thinks I am just overprotective. Now we have to attend a family gathering and my stomach twists with worry. The last time Jessica was around Lucas, she rolled her eyes at my precautions. I can already feel the tension building. If you are watching this now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from, and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I stood my ground when my son's life was at stake. Life after divorcing Michael 3 years ago has been a journey of rediscovering myself while prioritizing Lucas above everything else. Our daily routine revolves around vigilance with every single meal and snack. Lucas was diagnosed with severe peanut allergy when he was just 2 years old after a terrifying incident at a playdate where he touched a cookie and developed hives within minutes. His throat began to close and I rushed him to the emergency room, my heart pounding out of my chest. Since that day, I carry 2 EpiPens everywhere. Lucas wears a medical alert bracelet, and I have trained his teachers, friends, parents, and even our neighbors about emergency protocols. A mere trace of peanut protein can trigger anaphylaxis in Lucas within minutes. We have been to the emergency room 4 times in the past 5 years due to accidental exposures. Each time watching my son struggle to breathe as doctors rush around him has taken years off my life. My relationship with Michael's family has always been complicated, but it deteriorated further after the divorce. His mother, Martha, is a traditional woman who never quite approved of me. She believes children need to be exposed to all foods to build immunity, despite the allergist explaining multiple times that food allergies don't work that way. Michael's older sister, Jessica, has been the most dismissive about Lucas's condition. "Kids these days have so many allergies because parents are too clean," Jessica would say during family dinners while pointedly placing peanut-containing dishes near Lucas. "When we were growing up, nobody had these problems." Now Jessica is 7 months pregnant with her first child, and the entire family treats her like royalty. Every conversation revolves around her pregnancy cravings, nursery colors, and how she is carrying the first grandchild, completely ignoring that Lucas has been in the family for 7 years already. Last week, I received a call from Michael about his parents' 40th wedding anniversary celebration, a significant milestone that requires our attendance, he emphasized. Unfortunately, Michael had a business trip scheduled on the same weekend, so he couldn't take Lucas himself. "It would mean a lot to them if Lucas could be there," Michael insisted over the phone. "They rarely see him since the divorce." "Maybe they would see him more if they respected his medical needs," I replied, but eventually relented. Deep down, I want Lucas to have a relationship with his grandparents, despite our differences. The week before the party, I went into preparation mode. I made a batch of safe cupcakes for Lucas in case there were no suitable dessert options. I packed a lunchbox with sandwich alternatives, fresh fruit, and his favorite crackers. I refilled his EpiPen prescription and packed antihistamines, emergency contact information, and a letter from his allergist explaining the severity of his condition. I rehearsed with Lucas about food safety rules again, reminding him not to accept food from anyone but me, even family members. At 7, he understood the seriousness of his allergy, but he was still a child who could be tempted by a kindly offered treat. The night before the party, I called Martha to remind her about Lucas's allergy and ask about the menu. "We're having it catered," she said with a hint of pride. "Very fancy. I am sure they can accommodate your concerns." Her dismissive tone didn't inspire confidence, but I hoped for the best while preparing for the worst. Little did I know that this family gathering would turn into a nightmare that would change our family dynamics forever. The anniversary celebration was held at Martha and Terry's spacious suburban home, decorated elegantly with silver and white balloons and flowers. When Lucas and I arrived, we were greeted with polite but reserved smiles. Martha air-kissed my cheek while Terry gave Lucas an awkward pat on the head. "You're looking, well," Martha commented, her eyes taking in my simple blue dress. The unspoken comparison to my usual exhausted working mom appearance hung in the air. Some relatives approached with genuine warmth. Michael's cousin Amanda hugged me tightly and whispered, "It's good to see you here, brave of you to come." Her understanding smile made me feel slightly less like an outsider. Others were less welcoming. I overheard Michael's Aunt Diane saying, "I don't know why she still comes to family events. The divorce was finalized years ago." Her pointed glance in my direction made it clear I wasn't meant to miss her comment. Lucas stayed close to me, sensing the undercurrent of tension. He brightened when his grandfather showed him the new model train setup in the basement, a temporary reprieve from the social awkwardness. About an hour into the gathering, Jessica made her grand entrance. At 7 months pregnant, she wore a tight dress that showcased her baby bump, and she glowed with that special kind of pregnant woman radiance. The family immediately surrounded her, offering chairs, drinks, and compliments. Martha hovered proudly beside her daughter, beaming at every comment about the impending arrival. When Jessica spotted me by the refreshment table, she made her way over one hand protectively on her belly. "Well, if it isn't Lucia," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Still rocking the single mom look, I see." "Nice to see you too, Jessica. Congratulations on the pregnancy," I replied, keeping my tone neutral for Lucas's sake. "Thanks. At least someone in this family is giving Martha and Terry grandchildren who will actually live in the area," she said pointedly, knowing that I had moved 30 minutes away after the divorce to be closer to my job. I bit my tongue and turned my attention to the food table, carefully examining the dishes. I noticed several items that concerned me: a bowl of mixed nuts, a plate of cookies that could contain peanut butter, and several sauces without ingredient labels. Excusing myself, I found the catering manager in the kitchen and asked about allergens in the food. "We were not informed about any allergy concerns," he said apologetically. "I can point out which dishes definitely don't contain peanuts, but I cannot guarantee there's no cross-contamination in our kitchen." When I returned to the party with this information, Martha approached me with a tight smile. "Is there a problem with the catering?" she asked, conscious of nearby guests who might overhear. "They weren't informed about Lucas's allergy. I'm just trying to figure out what's safe for him to eat." Martha sighed heavily. "Lucia, don't you think you're being a bit excessive? Lucas looks perfectly fine to me." "He looks fine because I'm careful about what he eats," I replied, struggling to keep my voice even. "Allergic reactions don't happen until exposure. Back in my day, children ate whatever was served and were healthier for it," she said dismissively. This wasn't a new conversation. I remembered the Christmas dinner 3 years ago when Martha had insisted a store-bought pie was probably fine, despite not knowing the ingredients. Or the time Terry gave Lucas a candy from his pocket without checking with me first, leading to a terrifying hour of watching for symptoms. As I guided Lucas through the buffet, pointing out the few items that seemed safe, I felt the weight of judgmental stares. People watching us, whispering about the fussy mother who wouldn't let her child enjoy a normal meal at a family celebration. Lucas looked up at me with sad eyes. "Grandma thinks I'm making it up, doesn't she?" My heart broke a little. "No, sweetheart. She just doesn't understand. But I do, and keeping you safe is what matters." By the time we sat down with our carefully curated plates, I was emotionally exhausted, and the main event hadn't even begun. Just as Lucas and I settled at our table with our safe food options, Jessica entered the dining area carrying a large decorative basket. Her husband Daniel followed behind, looking somewhat uncomfortable as Jessica proudly placed the basket on a side table near the entrance. "Everyone, look what I brought," Jessica announced loudly, drawing all eyes to her. "My famous peanut butter cookies and peanut brittle for dessert, Mother's old recipe, the one she used to make for school bake sales." My heart sank as I watched her arrange the treats in the basket, removing the plastic wrap and releasing the unmistakable aroma of peanut butter into the air. The basket was placed on a low table, easily accessible to any child walking by, including Lucas. Even worse, the table was just a few feet from the corner where Lucas had set up his coloring books, the designated kids area for the event. I caught Lucas's eye and subtly shook my head, our silent signal for stay away. He nodded solemnly, but I could see the unfairness of the situation register on his young face. Taking a deep breath, I approached Jessica, trying to maintain a friendly demeanor despite my growing anxiety. "Jessica, the cookies look delicious," I began carefully, "but I'm a bit concerned about having them so close to where Lucas is sitting. Would you mind if we moved them to the adult dessert table instead?" Jessica's smile hardened. The basket is part of the decoration theme. Mother and I planned it specifically for this spot. I understand, but Lucas's allergy is severe and even airborne particles can trigger a reaction, I explained, keeping my voice low to avoid creating a scene. Jessica placed a protective hand on her pregnant belly, a gesture that seemed designed to remind everyone of her current status. I can't believe you're asking me to reorganize things when I'm 7 months pregnant and exhausted. Do you know how long I stood making these cookies for my parents' special day? Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside his wife. Jess, maybe we could just move the basket to the other table, he suggested quietly. Jessica turned to him with a look of betrayal. Not you too, I'm not going to completely change everything because of supposed allergies. I've been craving peanut butter this entire pregnancy and the doctor says it's perfectly fine for me to eat it. No one is saying you can't eat it, I clarified, feeling my patience waning. I'm just asking to move the open basket away from where children are playing. By now, our conversation had attracted attention. Martha hurried over, concern etched on her face, not for Lucas's safety, but for the disruption. What's going on here? She asked, looking between Jessica and me. Jessica immediately responded, Lucia is making a fuss about my dessert basket. You know the one we talked about last week? Martha's expression softened when addressing her daughter, then hardened when turning to me. Lucia Jessica went to a lot of trouble to make these treats for everyone. Surely Lucas can just stay on the other side of the room. I felt a surge of disbelief. This isn't about preference, Martha. Lucas has a life-threatening allergy. Having open peanut products so close to where he's sitting is genuinely dangerous. Terry approached our growing circle, attracted by the rising tension. What's the problem? Can't we all just enjoy the party? There's no problem if Lucia would stop making everything so dramatic, Jessica said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. I can't adjust my diet and my entire life because of her parenting choices. The implication that Lucas's allergy was somehow my fault, a result of my parenting choices, sent a wave of anger through me. Food allergies aren't parenting choices, Jessica. They're medical conditions, I said firmly. Several family members had gathered around us now. Michael's cousin Amanda stepped forward. Maybe we could put the basket in the kitchen until dessert time, she suggested diplomatically. But Jessica wasn't having it. No, I'm tired of everyone walking on eggshells around Lucia and her demands. I've had to limit so many things during pregnancy, I'm not going to limit what desserts I can bring to my own parents' anniversary. Feeling increasingly isolated, I scanned the room and saw Lucas watching us with wide, worried eyes. This was exactly the kind of stress and conflict I had hoped to avoid. Fine, I said finally. We'll relocate. Come on, Lucas. I guided Lucas to the garden patio away from the peanut-laden basket and the judging eyes of Michael's family. As we settled on a bench beneath a maple tree, Lucas looked up at me. Why doesn't Aunt Jessica believe I'm really allergic, Mom? The innocent question nearly broke me. Some people don't understand things they haven't experienced themselves. I explained, struggling to be fair despite my hurt. We sat in the garden for nearly half an hour, Lucas drawing pictures in his sketchbook while I tried to calm my racing thoughts. The isolation felt pointed and painful, but I reminded myself that Lucas's safety was worth any social discomfort. Sarah, Michael's younger sister, eventually found us in the garden. Unlike Jessica, Sarah had always been kind and understanding about Lucas's condition. Hey, you two, she said, sitting beside us. Quite a scene in there. I didn't want to cause problems. I sighed. Sarah shook her head. You didn't. Jessica is being ridiculous. She's been unbearable since getting pregnant, like she's the first woman in history to carry a child. Her solidarity was a balm to my frayed nerves. As we talked, I found myself remembering the last severe reaction Lucas had experienced nearly a year ago. We had been at a restaurant that claimed to be allergy safe, but Lucas had developed hives and breathing difficulties within minutes of eating. The terrifying rush to the hospital, the hours in the emergency room, the steroids and monitoring. Michael had been unreachable in a meeting and didn't arrive until Lucas was already stabilized. I just don't understand why they can't take this seriously, I confided in Sarah. Mom and Dad come from the generation that thinks allergies are new inventions, Sarah replied. And Jessica, well, Jessica has always been the princess who gets her way. Our conversation was interrupted by Martha calling everyone inside for the anniversary toast and cake cutting. With a deep breath, I took Lucas's hand and we rejoined the party, hoping the worst of the tension was behind us. I had no idea that the real crisis was yet to come. Back inside the house, the formal celebration was beginning. Guests gathered in the large dining room where a beautiful multi-tiered anniversary cake stood as the centerpiece on a long table decorated with silver candles and flower arrangements. Next to the cake, my stomach dropped when I spotted Jessica's contribution prominently displayed a large platter of what appeared to be various peanut butter desserts. "I made Daddy's favorite peanut butter fudge cake," Jessica announced proudly as people admired her baking. "It's our family's secret recipe passed down for generations. I even added extra peanut butter since it's been my biggest pregnancy craving." She cast a triumphant glance in my direction, the message clear her connection to family traditions trumped my son's medical needs. I guided Lucas to a spot far from the dessert table, but the dining room was crowded with guests, limiting how far we could distance ourselves. I whispered to Lucas to be extra careful not to touch anything and to stay right beside me. As Terry gave a heartfelt speech about 40 years of marriage to Martha Waitstaff, circulated with champagne and sparkling cider. In the shuffle of people moving to get drinks and find seats, Lucas and I became separated by just a few feet. I watched in horror as Lucas, trying to make his way back to me, accidentally bumped into a small side table where someone had placed a used napkin from Jessica's peanut desserts. When he steadied himself, his hand came into contact with the napkin. Within minutes, I noticed Lucas rubbing his eyes, which had begun to redden. Then he pulled at his collar, the first sign that his throat was feeling tight. "Mom!" He called, his voice already changing, taking on that hoarse quality I recognized with terror. "I feel funny." I pushed through the crowd to reach him, adrenaline surging through my body. His face was developing red blotches, and he was beginning to wheeze slightly. "My throat hurts," he whispered, fear in his eyes. I immediately grabbed my purse and pulled out the emergency medication kit, my hands shaking as I prepared the EpiPen. Around us, guests were still chatting and celebrating, oblivious to our unfolding emergency. "What's wrong with him? Is he choking?" Martha asked, finally noticing Lucas's distress. "He's having an allergic reaction," I said, trying to keep my voice steady for Lucas's sake. "He needs his epinephrine now." "Oh, surely it's not that serious," Jessica said, approaching our small crisis. "He probably just needs some water." "Stand back and give him air," I commanded, no longer caring about politeness. I helped Lucas to a chair and prepared the auto-injector. Some family members started to look concerned, while others exchanged glances that suggested they thought I was overreacting. Jessica stood with her arms crossed over her pregnant belly, looking skeptical. "Lucas, this is going to hurt for a second, but it will help you breathe better," I told him calmly, though my heart was racing. I administered the epinephrine into his thigh, counting to 10 as we had practiced so many times. Lucas whimpered at the injection, and tears spilled down his reddening cheeks. I held him close, monitoring his breathing, which was becoming increasingly labored despite the medication. "Someone call 911, I called out. "Tell them it's anaphylaxis in a 7-year-old child." Terry immediately pulled out his phone and made the call, his expression grave as the situation's severity finally registered. Martha hovered nearby, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by growing alarm. "But he barely touched anything. How could this happen so quickly?" "That's how severe food allergies work," I explained tersely, keeping my eyes on Lucas. "Cross-contamination from just a trace amount can trigger a full reaction." Jessica pushed forward. "This is ridiculous. He was fine a minute ago. You're scaring him into having symptoms." That was when Lucas began to vomit, his body's response to the systemic allergic reaction. The room went silent as the reality of the situation became undeniable. "The ambulance is 8 minutes out." Terry reported, his face pale. Those 8 minutes were among the longest of my life. Lucas's condition continued to deteriorate. The epinephrine had slowed the reaction but hadn't stopped it completely. His lips were beginning to show a bluish tint, and the wheezing had intensified. I administered the second EpiPen from my kit, fighting back tears as I tried to keep him calm. "Help is coming, baby. Just keep breathing with mommy, in and out like we practice." Family members backed away, giving us space shock evident on their faces. Martha had collapsed into a chair, her hand over her mouth. Terry stood by the front window, anxiously watching for the ambulance. Only Jessica remained defiant. "I don't understand why you're blaming my desserts. He didn't even eat any of them." "He didn't have to eat them." I snapped, my patience completely gone. "He touched a napkin that had peanut residue on it. That's all it takes. This is exactly why I asked you to keep the peanut foods away from where he was sitting." The wail of the ambulance siren cut through the tense atmosphere. Paramedics rushed in moments later, quickly assessing Lucas and placing an oxygen mask over his face. They asked rapid-fire questions about what had happened, what medications he had received, and his allergy history. As they prepared to transport him, I heard Jessica say to Daniel, "She's not watching him properly. This isn't my fault." I locked eyes with her over Lucas's stretcher. "This is exactly your fault. You were told about his allergy. You were asked to make accommodations. You chose to ignore a child's life-threatening medical condition because of your own selfishness." With that, I turned away and followed the paramedics to the ambulance, my entire world narrowed to the small, struggling form of my son on the stretcher. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and urgent medical interventions. The paramedics worked efficiently, monitoring Lucas's vital signs and administering additional medication to counter the allergic reaction. I held his small hand, trying to keep him calm while fighting my own panic. "Stay with me, Lucas," I whispered as his eyelids fluttered. "Mommy's right here." At the hospital, we were rushed directly into a treatment room in the emergency department. Doctors and nurses swarmed around Lucas, connecting him to monitors, starting an IV line, and providing respiratory support. The medical team worked with practiced urgency that only underscored the gravity of the situation. "Severe anaphylactic reaction," the doctor announced to her team. "Let's get him started on steroids, additional epinephrine, and prepare for intubation if his oxygen levels don't improve." I stood pressed against the wall, trying to stay out of their way while keeping Lucas in my sight. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Michael and his family, but I couldn't tear my attention away from my son long enough to respond. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, a nurse gently guided me to a chair near Lucas's bed. "He's stabilizing," she assured me. "The medications are working, his breathing is improving, and his blood pressure is coming back up." Relief washed over me, bringing with it a flood of tears I'd been holding back. Lucas looked so small and vulnerable among the medical equipment, his face still swollen and blotchy from the reaction. The emergency room doors burst open and Michael rushed in, his face ashen with worry. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment I saw the same fear that had been consuming me. "I got on the first flight back," he said breathlessly, moving to Lucas's bedside. "How is he? What happened?" Before I could answer, the doors opened again, revealing Martha, Terry, and Jessica. Martha's eyes were red from crying, and Terry looked shaken. Only Jessica maintained her defensive posture, standing slightly apart from her parents. "You need to leave," I said to Jessica, my voice low but firm. "You've done enough damage." Michael looked between us, confusion mixing with his concern. "What's going on? What happened at the party?" "Your sister brought peanut desserts to the party after being explicitly told about Lucas's allergy." I explained, unable to keep the anger from my voice. She placed them near where Lucas was sitting, refused to move them when asked, and then blamed me when he had a reaction from cross-contamination. Michael's expression hardened as he turned to his sister. "Is this true, Jessica?" Jessica placed a protective hand on her pregnant belly, a gesture that had become her shield. "I made desserts for Mom and Dad's anniversary. I didn't force anyone to eat them. Lucas must have touched something he shouldn't have." "He touched a napkin," I interjected. "A napkin with peanut residue that someone left on a table. That's all it took to send him into anaphylactic shock." Michael ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling with the situation. "Jessica, you know about Lucas's allergy. We've talked about this for years." "Oh, please," Jessica scoffed. "Everyone's allergic to something these days. It's become an excuse for attention and special treatment." The room fell silent at her callous words. Even Martha and Terry looked shocked by their daughter's attitude. "Attention," I repeated, my voice shaking with rage. You think my 7-year-old son stops breathing for attention? You think I enjoy carrying emergency medication everywhere we go? You think I wanted to watch paramedics struggle to keep my child alive today? Michael stepped between us, his face flushed with anger I rarely saw from him. That's enough, Jessica. Look around you. Look at where we are right now because of your carelessness. Don't you dare blame me, Jessica shot back. I'm 7 months pregnant. I have cravings. I can't be expected to change my entire diet because Lucia is raising a bubble boy. The doctor who had been treating Lucas stepped into our tense circle, her expression stern. I need to ask everyone to lower their voices. This is a place of healing, and that child needs calm and rest. She turned to address all of us. What your son experienced was a severe life-threatening allergic reaction. Without the quick administration of epinephrine and emergency care, this could have had a tragic outcome. Peanut allergies are among the most dangerous food allergies precisely because such minimal exposure can trigger severe reactions. Her clinical assessment silenced Jessica momentarily, but Martha stepped forward, her face crumpling. Is he going to be all right? She asked, her voice small. He's stabilizing now, but he'll need to remain under observation for at least 24 hours, the doctor explained. Anaphylactic reactions can sometimes have a biphasic response, which means symptoms can return after initially improving. The reality of how close we had come to losing Lucas seemed to finally penetrate the family's consciousness. Terry placed an arm around Martha, who had begun to cry quietly. Michael turned to me, genuine remorse in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Lucia. I should have been there. I should have made sure my family understood how serious this is. For the first time since our divorce, I saw Michael truly acknowledging the burden I had been carrying alone. The daily vigilance, the constant fear, the exhaustion of perpetually advocating for our son's safety in a world that often didn't believe us. As Lucas's monitors beeped steadily in the background, I faced the family that had dismissed my concerns for years. This stops now, I said quietly but firmly. No more dismissing his allergy. No more acting like I'm exaggerating. No more peanut products at family gatherings where Lucas is present. If you can't respect these boundaries, you won't be part of his life. I won't risk my son to spare your feelings or convenience. In that sterile hospital room surrounded by the evidence of how fragile life could be, I finally found the strength to set the boundaries I should have established years ago. Lucas stabilized through the night, though I never left his side. I dozed fitfully in the uncomfortable hospital chair, waking at every change in his breathing or beep from the monitors. The night nurse Gloria checked on us regularly, her kind eyes full of understanding. You're doing a great job, Mama, she said during one of her early morning checks. Being a parent to a child with severe allergies is like being a soldier always on alert. It feels like a battle sometimes, I admitted, especially when family doesn't understand. Gloria nodded sagely. I've seen it too many times. People don't believe until they see a reaction with their own eyes. It's not like a broken bone that shows up on an X-ray. Her validation was a balm to my soul after years of being treated like an overprotective neurotic mother. How do you do it alone? She asked gently. The father isn't involved. He tries. I said, more generous than I felt. But after the divorce, I became the primary caregiver. Michael gets Lucas every other weekend, but he's never had to handle an emergency alone. Gloria patted my hand. You're stronger than you know, but remember, it's okay to demand support from those who should be providing it. Her words stayed with me as dawn broke, painting the hospital room in soft morning light. Lucas stirred his eyes, opening slowly, the swelling in his face noticeably reduced. Mom, he croaked, his voice still rough from inflammation. I'm right here, sweetheart, I said immediately at his side. How are you feeling? Tired. My throat hurts, he whispered. Did I ruin Grandma and Grandpa's party? His concern for others, even after what he'd been through, brought tears to my eyes. No, baby. You didn't ruin anything. None of this was your fault. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. To my surprise, Martha stood in the doorway looking like she hadn't slept all night. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and she clutched a large shopping bag. May I come in? She asked tentatively, so different from her usual confident demeanor. I nodded, curious about this uncharacteristic visit. Martha approached Lucas's bed slowly, her eyes widening at the sight of the IV and monitors. "Hello, Lucas," she said softly. "Grandma brought you some things." Lucas offered a weak smile. "Hi, Grandma." Martha turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Lucia, I spent the night researching peanut allergies. I had no idea. The severity, the science behind it. I printed out some medical journal articles." She pulled several papers from her bag. "I should have educated myself years ago instead of dismissing your concerns." The admission stunned me into momentary silence. "I also went to that special allergy-free bakery across town this morning," she continued, removing a carefully packaged cupcake from her bag. "They guaranteed no nuts or cross-contamination. I thought Lucas might like something sweet when he's feeling better." "Thank you," I managed, genuinely touched by her effort. "Terry and I have been talking," Martha said, settling into the chair opposite mine. "We were wrong, terribly wrong. We let our old-fashioned ideas and frankly our daughter's influence cloud our judgment about something so serious." A heaviness lifted from my shoulders at her words, a validation I hadn't realized I desperately needed. "Where are Terry and Michael?" I asked. "In the cafeteria. We wanted to come see Lucas in smaller groups to not overwhelm him." She hesitated. "Jessica and Daniel went home. She was upset after what happened." I could imagine Jessica's reaction to being called out by Michael, probably for the first time in her life. Martha reached across the bed and tentatively touched my hand. "Terry and I would like to pay for Lucas's hospital stay. It's the least we can do." "That's not necessary," I began. "Please," she interrupted. "Let us do this. And more importantly, we want to learn about Lucas's condition, about emergency procedures, about how to make our home safe for him." Before I could respond, Terry and Michael appeared in the doorway. Terry's usually jovial face was solemn as he approached the bed and gently ruffled Lucas's hair. "Hey, sport, you gave us quite a scare." Michael moved to my side, his hand lightly touching my shoulder. "The doctor says he's doing well. They want to keep him one more night for observation, but the prognosis is good." Martha stood, gathering her composure. "Michael, your father and I will head home now. We'll come back this evening with some things Lucas might need." She leaned down and kissed Lucas's forehead. "Grandma loves you very much." After they left, Michael took Martha's vacated chair. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching Lucas drift back to sleep. "I've been thinking about what happened," Michael finally said. "About Jessica." I tensed, prepared for him to make excuses for his sister as he had so many times before. "She was wrong," he stated firmly. "Completely, utterly wrong. I tried talking to her last night, but she refuses to acknowledge the severity of what happened." "She nearly killed our son Michael," I said plainly. He nodded, his expression pained. "I know. And until she accepts that fact and changes her attitude, I don't think she should be around Lucas." His support in this boundary was unexpected and deeply appreciated. "Thank you for understanding." "I'm sorry it took something this serious for me to really get it," he replied. "I should have been a better advocate for Lucas with my family. I left too much of that burden on you." In the days that followed, Lucas continued to recover. We received a stream of visitors, including Sarah, who brought Lucas's favorite comic books, and several of Michael's relatives who had witnessed the incident and wanted to express their support. Jessica remained notably absent, though Daniel visited briefly, looking uncomfortable and apologetic. "Jessica is having a hard time accepting her role in what happened," he explained awkwardly. "The pregnancy hormones make it difficult for her to admit when she's wrong." I bit back a retort about pregnancy not causing cruelty. "This isn't about blame, Daniel. It's about Lucas's safety going forward." He nodded. "I understand. I've been reading about food allergies since it happened. I had no idea how serious they could be." A week after we returned home, Michael organized a family meeting at his apartment. Lucas was staying with my parents, giving the adults space to have an open conversation. Jessica arrived last, her pregnant belly leading the way as she waddled into the living room. She avoided eye contact with me, sitting as far away as the seating arrangement allowed. Michael stood before the assembled family, which included his parents, Jessica, and Daniel, Sarah, and me. "We're here to talk about how we move forward as a family," he began. "What happened at the anniversary party was preventable and cannot happen again. Martha nodded emphatically. Terry and I have already removed all peanut products from our home. We've purchased new bakeware to eliminate any risk of cross-contamination when Lucas visits. That's a good start, Michael acknowledged. But the most important change needs to be in our understanding and attitude. He turned to Jessica. Which brings us to you, Jess. Jessica shifted uncomfortably, one hand protectively on her belly. I don't see why I'm being singled out. I didn't force Lucas to touch anything. No one is saying you did, I interjected, keeping my voice calm. But you deliberately brought allergens to a family gathering after being told about the risks. You refused to move them when asked. You dismissed a serious medical condition as attention-seeking. I was making traditional family recipes for our parents' anniversary, Jessica countered. Am I supposed to change everything about our family customs because of one person's issues? Sarah leaned forward. If I had a deadly allergy to peanuts, would you have brought those desserts? Jessica faltered. That's different. You're my sister. And Lucas is your nephew, Michael said firmly. Family looks out for each other, Jess. All of the family. Look, I said, trying a different approach. In a few weeks, you're going to be a mother too. Imagine if your child developed a serious medical condition. Wouldn't you expect your family to take every precaution to keep your baby safe? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Jessica's face. I'm not asking you to never eat peanut products again, I continued. I'm asking for basic consideration at family gatherings. I'm asking you to believe that Lucas's allergy is real and serious. Daniel placed his hand over Jessica's. Babe, we need to do better. What if our baby has allergies or other medical needs? We'd want people to take them seriously. Jessica's expression softened slightly at her husband's words. She looked around the room, perhaps finally sensing the unified front before her. Fine, she said eventually. I'll be more careful at family events. But I still think everyone is making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. It wasn't the wholehearted apology I had hoped for, but it was a start. Michael caught my eye across the room, his expression conveying that he understood this was only the beginning of changing his sister's attitude. As the meeting concluded, I approached Jessica. I know we've had our differences, and I know you don't like me much. That's okay. But Lucas is an innocent child who deserves to be safe around his family. I hope when your baby arrives, you'll understand that parental protectiveness isn't paranoia, it's love. She didn't respond, but for the first time, she didn't immediately dismiss me either. As she waddled away, I felt a strange mix of hope and resignation. Some relationships might never be fully healed, but perhaps they could at least become less toxic. 2 months passed and summer turned to early fall. Lucas had fully recovered physically from the anaphylactic episode, though the emotional impact lingered. He asked more questions about his allergy, became more vigilant about checking food, and expressed anxiety when family gatherings were mentioned. Is Aunt Jessica going to be there? Became his standard question, his little face tight with worry. To address the family's collective ignorance about food allergies, I organized an educational session at our local library. I invited an allergist to speak, brought informational pamphlets, and even arranged for a demonstration of how to use an EpiPen with training devices. To my surprise, nearly everyone from Michael's family attended. Martha and Terry arrived early, helping me set up chairs and distribute materials. Sarah brought her boyfriend, eager to make sure he understood Lucas's needs. Even a few extended family members who had witnessed the incident at the party came curious to learn more. Michael had become a much more active parent in the aftermath of the hospital stay. He attended Lucas's allergist appointments, researched safe restaurants for their weekend visits, and kept a fully stocked allergy emergency kit at his apartment. The crisis had awakened something in him, a recognition of the daily stakes of parenting our son that he had previously left primarily to me. I've been thinking, he said one afternoon as we sat watching Lucas at soccer practice. I'd like to take Lucas for a full week during his school break. I've taken time off work, and I thought we could go to that allergy-friendly resort in Vermont you mentioned once. The suggestion touched me deeply. He'd love that, and I think it would be good for both of you. Michael nodded, his eyes on our son running across the field. I should have been more present all along, not just for the fun parts, but for the hard stuff too. Martha had also transformed her approach. She called regularly to check on Lucas and became something of an allergy awareness crusader among her friends. She replaced her recipe cards for family gatherings with allergy-safe versions and proudly showed me the allergy alert sign she had posted on her front door. "No one brings peanut products into my house anymore," she declared. "Not when my grandson's life is at stake." Jessica gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Ellie in late August. The news came via a group text from Daniel along with pictures of a red-faced newborn with a shock of dark hair. In a surprising gesture, Jessica invited Lucas to meet his new cousin a few weeks after the birth. The visit was slightly awkward, but marked by a noticeable shift in Jessica's demeanor. Her home had been tidied of visible peanut products, and she even mentioned having wiped down surfaces before our arrival. As Lucas cautiously peered at the sleeping infant, Jessica watched him with a new expression, something softer than I had ever seen from her. "She has a dairy intolerance," Jessica confided quietly when Lucas was distracted by Daniel's offer to see the nursery. "Nothing like Lucas's allergy, but it's been hard. The pediatrician says she can't have any dairy protein even through my breast milk." It was the closest thing to an olive branch she had ever extended. "That must be challenging," I acknowledged. "If you need any resources on navigating food restrictions, I have plenty." She hesitated. "I might take you up on that." In early October, Martha and Terry hosted a Sunday dinner for the family. It was the first full gathering since the disastrous anniversary party. I arrived with Lucas, both of us slightly tense despite the positive changes of recent months. Martha greeted us with warm hugs. "Everything is peanut-free," she assured Lucas. "Grandma made sure of it. And look, I made little cards for each dish listing all the ingredients." The dining table was indeed set with small printed cards beside each serving dish, detailing ingredients and potential allergens. It was a level of consideration I had once thought impossible from my former mother-in-law. Jessica arrived with baby Ellie and Daniel. She gave me a stiff nod, not exactly friendly, but lacking the open hostility of before. Progress, however, small. As we gathered around the table, Terry raised his glass. "I'd like to make a toast. To family, to health, and to learning from our mistakes. We're grateful that Lucas is well and that we have this chance to do better by him." Lucas beamed at being the center of positive attention, a far cry from being treated as an inconvenience because of his allergy. After dinner, Jessica approached me while I was helping Martha clear dishes. She adjusted sleeping Ellie in her arms and cleared her throat. "I've been meaning to say, what happened at the anniversary? It was..." She struggled visibly with the words. "It was wrong of me. I didn't want to believe it could be that serious." I paused, surprised by the admission. "Thank you for saying that. Having Ellie has changed things," she continued. "The thought of someone dismissing her needs or putting her at risk?" She shook her head. "I get it now. Not completely maybe, but I'm trying." It wasn't a gushing apology, but coming from Jessica, it was monumental. "That means a lot, Jessica, to both Lucas and me." Later that evening, as Lucas played with his baby cousin under careful supervision, I stood back and observed the scene with a sense of cautious optimism. The road to this point had been difficult and nearly tragic, but perhaps something valuable had emerged from the crisis. Martha sidled up next to me. "He's so good with her," she commented, watching Lucas gently hold Ellie's tiny hand. "He's always wanted to be a big cousin," I replied. Martha's eyes were moist when she turned to me. "Lucia, I want you to know how sorry I am for all the years I minimized his allergy. Fear is no excuse for ignorance, especially when it comes to the safety of children." "We all have our blind spots," I said generously. "What matters is being willing to learn and change." As we prepared to leave, Jessica unexpectedly handed me a business card. "There's a support group for parents of children with food allergies in my neighborhood. I thought, maybe it would be helpful for you." I accepted the card, recognizing it as the peace offering it was intended to be. "Thank you. Maybe we could go together sometime. It might be good for Ellie to grow up understanding food allergies even if she doesn't have them herself." Jessica nodded, a tentative smile forming. "I'd like that." On the drive home, Lucas was unusually contemplative. "Mom, do you think Aunt Jessica likes me now?" I considered how to answer truthfully while remaining age-appropriate. I think Aunt Jessica is learning how to be a better aunt. Sometimes people need time to understand things that are different from their own experience. Like my allergy. Exactly like your allergy, I confirmed. The important thing is that she's trying now. Lucas nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. I'm glad I didn't die at the party. His blunt statement sent a chill through me, a reminder of how close we had come to tragedy. Me too, baby. More than you could ever know. In the months following the incident, I channeled my experience into creating a support network for other parents of children with severe allergies. What began as informal meetings at the library grew into a community organization that provided resources, advocacy, and emotional support. Michael became a co-parent in the true sense of the word, sharing not just the joys, but the responsibilities and anxieties that came with raising a child with a life-threatening condition. His family, led by Martha's unexpected championship, became allies rather than obstacles in keeping Lucas safe. Even Jessica, in her own halting way, made efforts to rebuild her relationship with Lucas and with me. Baby Ellie's dairy intolerance had given her a small window into our world, and while she would never be my closest friend, we had found a tentative mutual respect. The journey had been painful, nearly catastrophic, but through it, I had found my voice as an advocate, not just for Lucas, but for all children whose invisible medical conditions were too often dismissed or minimized. I had learned that sometimes it takes standing in the eye of the storm to find the strength you never knew you had. As for Lucas, he continued to navigate the world with his allergy, but now surrounded by a family that finally understood the gravity of his condition and the importance of creating safe spaces for him. Watching him play confidently with his baby cousin, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Sometimes the most important battles we fight aren't against obvious enemies, but against ignorance and indifference. And sometimes the family we struggle most to connect with can, through crisis and growth, become the support system we always needed them to be. Have you ever had to stand your ground to protect someone you love, even when it meant confronting family? Drop a comment below to share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and standing up for what's right. Thank you for listening, and remember that your instincts as a parent or caregiver are worth honoring and defending, no matter who questions them.